Live from my side bedroom closet in Brooklyn, this is Spirit Matters, your daily Bhakti Center podcast. And I am Dayal here with Kishor Chandra, Acyuta Gopi, and our live studio audience who are tuning in from their side bedroom closets from around the world. I'm really happy to be here with you guys. How you doing this morning?
I feel like Kishore always waits for me, but then I always wait for Kishore.
And then before either of you say something, I just jump in. I got to fill the gap of silence. Blah, here we're going to talk about this today. Forgiveness and God and spirituality.
No, I'm good. We're good. It's one day at a time. And winter and summer seasons. I'm not exactly so sober minded yet. I'm working on it.
You're not a fan of winter, are you?
Um, no. No. I was gonna make some
Something.
I was gonna make do, and then I realized I could also just say no, not really.
No. Kishore, how about you? How are you in winter doing?
I'm doing good. I'm still feeling the sun from Puerto Rico on my skin, so it feels good. Um, and yeah, I think sorry, Achuta. I still have this image of Achuta while we were in Puerto Rico with like the giant snow coat, just like oh man. But I feel you, Achuta. I'm born and raised in New York, so the winters are not my friend. I've actually tried my best to stay out of New York in the winter somehow. I go back to my family's country in Ecuador or something. I'm just like, I can't do it. Um, but I was gonna say that on my mind, I just wanted to throw this out there for today because Dayal and I were like in an all-day Bhakti Center meeting yesterday, which was really, really nice. And the main topic of the meeting, I think, was trust
Mm.
and building trust and like what trust means. And I feel like it's so interesting because we've kind of talked about this a little bit without talking about it so much. We talked about surrender and we've talked about like trusting in Krishna's plan and trusting that Krishna protects us. And Dayal gave this beautiful definition of faith that's not that everything is going to go my way, how I want it to go. I was just listening to a lecture this morning by Radhanath Swami, and he was talking about this this idea or this principle of Maya Sukhaya, right? Like our plans for getting happiness out of the material world, our plans for making everything go according to our way. And he was speaking about how really, and just to go off of Dayal's interpretation of faith as well, that we're equipped, that when those hard moments come, like how can I stay trusting? How can I stay faithful? And yeah, that's just really on my mind because we had this all day meeting. I was feeling like, trust. Oh man, like, and I feel like sometimes we have these big concepts in our minds, like trust and faith and surrender. But then it's like, what does that actually look like on a lived day-to-day basis? And it's kind of scary, like it's kind of like intense to scratch away from the surface a little bit. I remember just giving this example a few weeks ago where it's just like the most simple thing of just like, how are you? I'm great. How are you? And that's it, right? And to me, that's not like the most, it's not, we're not going deep, we're not getting into it. But of course, at the same time, if it's like, how are you? I'm suffering, it's like, this is kind of intense. So yeah, I kind of just wanted to throw that out there and see how you all kind of process trust or what that word looks or means to you in your daily life.
Well, Doyle hasn't even spoken yet, so.
I gave the whole intro. I did the live from my side bedroom closet thing, everything. I did my whole act. I got nothing left. That was it. I was rehearsing that all morning.
Ah. I feel like there's a really good video. Brene Brown gives like a really cool elongated definition of trust. And she speaks about this vulnerability. She speaks about like taking responsibility, this accountability, this openness, and then not just making room for somebody else to be open, but also then having having that space, having that availability to be open yourself. And I think that that's where I struggle the most, right? Because, as for holding space for somebody, I feel like that's something I've geared myself up for my entire life. Been practicing that for a really long time. Being able to be a really good listener, actively listening, really actually honing in on what somebody's saying, like all this stuff. And then what I think nobody actively kind of prepares really cool leaders and people for is like, okay, now, how do we flip that so that you're open and can actually trust somebody else enough with all your crap? And most of the time, I'm like, oh, like, because at that point, like it's like, well, I've given you a lot of things, and who knows what's going to happen. And we are I don't know, I can't say we. Me and my mind roommate, we are constantly assuming the worst. And I was just kind of like thinking about this a lot yesterday. I'm usually assuming the worst. And so I kind of get to this point where I'm like, no, nah, just as soon as things start going well, the people are probably going to desert and abandon me forever. And, like I was kind of like chanting and meditating on it. I was like, whoa, why? Why is this like my fallback? Why is this like my thing? And, I have been in a lot of situations where people have left. And so I think there's this preemptive, cool, callous, build up that thick skin, because when you're growing up, the one thing that you're told is you just got to develop a thicker skin. It's not like, you know what? Yeah, people leave and people are mean and people desert you, and that sucks. And I am so sorry about that. But there is always going to be this person here, and there is always going to be that person there. And so the parents and all the people around you, in order to like build you up and make you stronger, they're like, just develop a thicker skin. And so I think that it behooves us to make spaces where we teach strong people then how to trust other people.
I was really reflecting when you mentioned assume the worst, because I've also heard very much trust in terms of believing the best. And I heard it in the context of a sermon that was given once by a Christian pastor, and he was talking, I think it's in Ecclesiastes, where they have those definitions of love that are often read at weddings. Love is kind, love is forgiving, all these things. And one of the things is love believes all things. Love believes all things. And the way that he spoke about that concept was the idea of where our mind goes when things go wrong. When someone is late, when someone is whatever it may be, believing the best or assuming the worst. And it's a choice that we make in the mind. And I think that, so much of what we hear in Vedic literatures about the nature of the mind throughout the Bhagavad Gita, throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam, throughout the writings of our acharyas, is that we live with this mind and we think the narrative of our mind is just reality. But we never challenge the narratives of our mind and think, maybe there's another way in which I can respond to that, in terms of like, like I speak with people all the time, it's like whenever things go wrong, the default answer is that it's my fault. I'm broken. I'm wrong in some ways. I'm entering relationships with a deficit, that like I have a lack of worth that I need to prove in some way. Or it's the other way. It's the other person's fault. Like there's always someone to blame. There's always somebody to blame, whether it's myself, whether it's other people, whether it's God. Blame. And I think I was meditating on this recently, that the opposite of blame is meaning. That when something goes wrong or doesn't go the way that I want, there's always someone to blame. It's someone's fault, my fault, God's fault, somebody else's fault, the government's fault, whoever's fault. But the opposite of blame is meaning. That's not someone's fault, but like, what is the meaning that I'm finding in this? And I think that trust comes from that place of there's always meaning to something, and that there's a purpose behind this, whether even if it's just my own personal individual growth, and I could take blame away and I can take fear away from this person hurt me or this person is out to get me. to as opposed to there's a loving divine higher power who's always looking out for me, even if that looking out for me manifests in the form of circumstances not going the way I wanted them to externally. And I think it becomes this deeper form of trust rather than like, no one's ever going to lie to me. No one's ever going to steal from me. The weather's always going to be sunny. Nothing's ever going to go wrong, to like, things may go wrong externally, but I don't have to turn and shift blame and think the world's against me. Everything sucks, etc. And I can turn it towards like, how is this adding to my journey in a way that's bringing me closer to where I want to go spiritually?
Yeah. I think I'll put one caveat in my whole like way I've learned to trust. And it kind of leads into once Rasika, your Rasika, Dayal, she asked me a question and she was like, how do you establish your faith in Krishna? Like how does that look for you? She's like, because it's like a big kind of bold thing. How does that work? And I kind of like, I always wanted to answer, but I always wanted it to be like, I was like, I feel like this needs a discussion. And one of the ways that I've done that is the totally sucky times. There's been enough sucky times that I feel as though I've like tested this relationship with Krishna. And so then when Krishna says, he's like, well, I'm not leaving. I'm like, oh no, yeah, no, I know. I've got that. We've tested it. We've done the things like,
I've
like I feel like,
tried to get you to go.
right. Yeah. Like I feel like I've done the things. I've been a brat. I've been great. I've been all these things, all of them. I've blamed you, yelled at you, not blamed you, taken it back, all this stuff. And there's just been this constant, it's like, okay, okay, okay. And so I've kind of looked at it, and for a while I was like, nah, my only caveat is God. Like everybody else can go kick rocks, but me and God, we like. And then I gave myself the same advice that I started giving other people after that, which was, look, you can build up those walls really, really high, and you'll be really good at it, and no one will ever get in to hurt you, but you will also be in there all by yourself, and you won't be able to get out either. It's like, so at a certain point I was like, we get to choose. We could be in this tower by ourselves, or we could extend a little bit. And what I started realizing and like writing down and actively reminding myself was that if I choose to be open and vulnerable with somebody, which means if I choose to give them a portion of myself, if I choose to like love somebody and that doesn't work out in a conventional sort of way, however that looks, like if we're not friends anymore, if we, like whatever it is, it's not a fail. It's not a failure, nor have I lost anything. Because if I really honestly, truly believe that I'm part and parcel of a Krishna, who Sri Ishopanishad says first and foremost is always perfect, complete, and whole, regardless of how many portions he gives of himself, always complete, perfect, and whole. If I believe that I'm actually part and parcel of that, having all of those qualities, even in minute form, then I'm always perfect and complete and whole. Doesn't matter. It doesn't actually take anything away from me. So even if I choose to trust in somebody and they break that trust, which has happened, then I actually have to go back and reassess and do a diagnostic. Now, what did I actually lose? And usually the answer is, well, actually nothing. Sometimes I get hurt. Sometimes it's like I have expectations of what I wished would have occurred, or I have these things that are built up about like the story in my head about how things should have gone. But actually what I've lost is nothing. Usually by opening up and trusting somebody, even if they don't stay, I've gained something, a lesson, a friend, a conversation that helped me, some good thinking points, even if they're not there forever. Those lessons can still be there. So like you said, the opposite of this blame game is like, okay, what did I actually gain? What meaning is there to gain here? And so, yeah, I started reminding myself that I'm like, but love given and love given freely. is never something that's just lost. And we have this narrative with each other, you know, like it's like you fall in love with somebody, it doesn't work. I gave you parts of myself that I'll never get back. And I'm like, but you were always still whole, perfect, and complete. You're part of this ultimate source, which is always whole, perfect, and complete. You haven't lost.
That's rich. I don't know if it's just me, but I think like Kishore is like ready to get in there. He's got something to say.
Yeah, I've got stuff to say. Well, I mean, like everything you just said, Acyuta, I was like, I was muted, but I was just like, yes, 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 yes. I was like personal cheerleader over here. But I thought it was really interesting the way that you described how like having that knowledge, right? Like understanding, like if I actually believe that Krishna is whole, no matter how many parts of himself he spreads and gives away and all of that stuff, then that, should create a sense of, steadiness and foundation in all of us. However, my caveat to that, I guess, is that I think I'm just reading some of these comments. Dinesh Das said, y'all said trust, and my shoulders tensed immediately. And Sydney was like, me too. And it's like, I feel like I really loved what you said, Acyuta. It's like that putting the relationship to the test in a sense, right? Like putting my relationship with Krishna to the test and going through those ups and downs and going through those moments, I feel like are something that can't be manufactured. It's not something that you can just read or hear from someone and be like, oh yeah, I get it. It's like you have to have the courage in a sense to put your foot forward and go through that up and down roller coaster of the relationship. I really liked how you were talking about, that fear that we sometimes have of trusting, essentially, of being abandoned or of this. And I'm someone, I don't know if you know this about me, Acyuta, but Dayal knows this about me. I'm someone that's like, I'm not going to get abandoned. I'm going to get on the plane first. I have like plan B, plan C, plan D. I have like my finger on the button, like booking a flight to Spain, like as we speak. Not anymore. I've calmed down from that.
He's buying properties.
But I realized, like in retrospect, it's like, yeah, I'm just trying to run away. And as they say, no matter where you go in the world, your problems always follow you. And I also had this experience of my relationship with Krishna. I think we all have, being put to the test, and just that realization of like Krishna's actually always going to be with you. He's not going to judge you when you're being, a brat and naughty and just like, all over the place, still there with you, still going to love you. And it's like, I feel like that realization, it's good to hear it from other people. Like, I think that what we're doing right now and having the Sangha is really good, but I feel like it's so personal and it's so like unique and intimate to you and your relationship with Krishna that it really can't be like manufactured or faked at all. Like you just got to go through it. You just got to, and I think I'm rambling, so I'll just say, like, I really, really think it's about that courage of taking the first step, of taking that first step towards Krishna. I was thinking of this verse that said in the 11th canto of Bhagavatam that basically says that the essential problem is us turning away from Krishna. Bhagavatam 11:237, right? Like it's like the essential problem is just us turning away from Krishna. And it's like, yeah. And actually Krishna is always there for us. I was thinking, I won't go so much into this, but I was thinking, I met the devotees when I was 21, and it took me like 5 years to actually start taking devotional life seriously. And it was so interesting because I kept on meeting the devotees unplanned. And whenever I tell people this, they're like, yeah, I something also like this happened to me. And it's like Krishna works in those ways. It's very tricky, right? It's like I met devotees when I was 21 and I was like, nah. Like this is, I mean, I love it. I love Kirtan. The prasadam tastes great. Cool. Bhagavad Gita. But I was like, I don't know about this. And then Krishna was like, oh yeah? Well, and then I flew to another city in another part of the world and Krishna was like, boop, I appear here. And I was like, what are you doing here? I thought I was done with you. And then I fly somewhere else and Krishna's like, boop, I'm also here. The devotees are there. And it's like, I really, really feel and believe, because the more and more people I speak to in the community, bhakti practitioners, it's like those magical moments of Krishna appearing, of Krishna reciprocating. Actually, it's like they're not something that can be faked or copied or logically even thought about. It's like we just have to experience them for ourselves.
And it's the same way, it's the same thing with trust all around. You know, if you want to build that trust, even though it makes all of us like, if you really want to build that trust, you have to like, there's no sidestepping the getting in the water and just kind of like having the courage to do it, knowing for sure, knowing that you actually don't lose anything. And like, you know we come from, there's a whole societal structure that is based on wins and losses, but this is not what actually happens. And what I kind of feel is interesting is like, you know, I will develop my trust in Krishna and then conversely not in anyone else, because I'm like, yeah, but they're not perfect. Psh, okay.
Get
And
out of
then I
here.
find my exactly, but then I find myself giving advice to other people like, but you really think Krishna can't show his mercy through somebody else? He can't speak to you through somebody else? Is that what we're really thinking? We really gonna limit my Lord like that? And so then I have to turn that advice back on myself when I see that, when I see my personality, my insides up and it's tensing up and all this stuff, and my Sagittarius moon is like, I could be gone. You'll never see me again. Moreover, you won't even exist in my world. Like, you know, like
Yeah.
it's like
Yes.
all the things, all the ways that we like set up,
I
like,
can't find Acyuta on Instagram anymore. Where did she go? I'm blocked. I got
yeah.
blocked.
It's like one day you post 20 stories, next day you disappear for 3 months. It's like, but yeah, everybody has these, and it's like these coping mechanisms. And my sister was always like, don't let your coping mechanisms become your way of life. They were there for a specific purpose, to help you get through something, to help you try and survive something, and then release those, let those go. And so I started thinking about renunciation and this idea of renunciation in life as something totally different. I started thinking about renunciation of concepts now, instead of like renunciation of things or people, like renunciation of concepts, that self doubt. I'm like, oh, I could renounce that. Huh, cool. Going to renounce that. And it's going to be an active thing. And I'm going to have to remind myself. And I'm really going to have to do that work. But that's the only way, like you said, is to actually charge forward, get in there and like test it out.
Yeah. I got some things to say and share. Can I do it? I all these things I want to read. I was looking up all these verses you guys are quoting, and it's really beautiful. I love how Acyuta quoted the opening invocation of the Ishopanishad, where it mentions the personality guided is perfect and complete. And because he is completely perfect, all emanations from him, such as this phenomenal world, are perfectly equipped as complete wholes. Whatever is produced of the complete whole is also complete in itself. Because he is the complete whole, even though so many complete units emanate from him, he remains the complete balance. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. It's a long purport. I want to read a section of it, a few lines. He says, all facilities are given to the small complete units, namely the living beings, i.e. you, me, and everyone listening, to enable them to realize the complete whole. All forms of incompleteness, meaning something's lost, something was taken away, that I'm no longer my whole self, are experienced due to incomplete knowledge of the complete whole. Because we do not know that there is a complete arrangement in nature for our maintenance, we make efforts to utilize the resources of nature to create a so-called complete life of sense enjoyment. Because the living entity cannot enjoy the life of the senses without being dovetailed with a complete whole, the misleading life of sense enjoyment is illusion. The hand of a body is a complete unit as long as it is attached to the complete body. When the hand is severed from the body, it may appear like a hand, but it actually has none of the potencies of a hand. Similarly, living beings are part and parcel of the complete whole, and if they are severed from the complete whole, the illusory representation of completeness cannot fully satisfy them. And the purport goes on, but as I was thinking about this, and also the verse that Kishor Chandra quoted from the Bhagavatam, which I won't read in full, although I wanted to because I put it in the chat. It's time. But this sense of turning away from Krishna is the source of our disconnection. And there's that in Shakespeare wrote in Romeo and Juliet. Juliet refers to Romeo as, "You are the god of my idolatry." You know, it's sort of like the epitome of that sense of like, you complete me. This sense of disconnection and incompleteness that we feel, and we're walking around the material world with this empty bucket or with this empty case saying, "Fill me up." We even had "you complete me." You know, this idea of like putting trust in other people, meaning that like you're going to complete me in some way, as opposed to understanding everything's divine connection and my divine connection and feeling that sense of completion, and not running around the world looking for a sense of completion, but looking for a sense of connection and enhancing my already known sense of completion. It's like the idea, the meaning of life, the meaning of us as living entities is Anandamaya Bhyasa. We're all seeking pleasure, but it doesn't mean that we're deficient of pleasure and looking to find it, but we're full of pleasure and we're looking to eternally enhance and develop and increase and spice it up and grow and enhance in some way. And so I think that like material consciousness is the sense of like, I'm incomplete, I'm insufficient, I'm miserable, I have nothing, I needed to fill it up. And spiritual life is a sense that I am complete, I am full, I am made of Satchit Ananda, and I'm looking to share, enhance, and develop that in an infinite myriad of ways with every living being that's connected with God.
Well, this session has turned Kishore and I into bobblehead dolls. Like, we're just like, and if you can't see it, we're just kind of like, yes, and nodding the whole time. Yes. So like, there's a really interesting term, and it's mentioned a few times within Srimad Bhagavatam and other places, but my mom used it so much that it became like, so you hear about causeless mercy, right? This open heart, this cracked open heart that Krishna is available for all of us with. The opposite of that, right? The jiva, what the jiva has is causeless unwillingness to serve. And that always, like, I'm like, oh yeah. Huh. So I'm like, at any moment I can kind of gauge, what is it that I'm really experiencing this moment? Am I experiencing Krishna's causeless mercy? Or am I really experiencing this tug of war with my causeless unwillingness to serve?
Because of a lack of trust that I'm going to lose myself.
Which only
There's
comes
nothing to
from,
lose when you
right,
give.
which only comes
There's
from
nothing
a
to
lack
lose when
of
you give.
knowing who Krishna is.
That's my takeaway. There's nothing to lose when you give. Kimberly, what do you got did you write that one down? Is that our takeaway for today? Let's hear some takeaways from Kimberly, and then we're going to get some closing words from Kishor and Acyuta. If anybody else has takeaways, put them in the chat. We want to hear them, see them, read them, keep them in our little pocket.
All right, so I wrote that trust is being vulnerable and open, making room both for someone else and then making room for yourself to be open as well to others. And then I loved that you guys talked about how it's also about us having the courage to take the first step towards Krishna, and knowing that love that is given and love that is given freely is something that's never lost, and how we're always perfect, complete, and whole. I really love that.
I love that. I love that you brought in the Ishopanishad, and that it was so beautiful and brilliant, Acyuta. I love it. If the Ishopanishad was turned into a novel, that's what it would be. You never lose when you give. I love that. I love that. Krishna never loses when he gives, and we don't either. Closing, Sydney, don't let your coping mechanisms become your way of life. Yes, that's a huge one too. Those were the two episode titles I was toggling back and forth with. Don't let your coping mechanisms become your way of life, and you never lose when you give. Kishor and Acyuta, what are your closing thoughts?
This word is coming to my mind, and it's a word that I think Prabhupada uses a lot in Sri Ishopanishad in the purports and stuff, but maybe we can talk about this at another time. But just being properly situated, like understanding my position, understanding like who I am and what this material nature is, and understanding who Krishna is, and understanding how that relationship works. Because when there's a lot of clarity around that, then I will no longer feel empty like a bucket, looking for love in all the wrong places, not trusting people, just in this state of fear that, so much of the world is constantly in. And I always go back to that. Like whenever I feel off, I'm like, wait a minute. I have to remember who I am, remember what the nature of this world is, remember who Krishna is, and remember how this whole thing works. And it really, really calms my mind and helps trust come back into my heart.
I agree with that. And it made me, because I do this as a joke. Like there are some things that I have to like, I I'm constantly joking with the people that I like. So there are things that come in, and so properly situate is something that I've used as a joke now. Like I'm like, let me get myself properly situated.
Yeah.
And usually like it kind of brings my mind back to like, wait, what am I doing again? And even though it's light and funny or whatever, but exactly what you said, and it's exactly this verse. It's like all of this fear comes when you're not properly situated. You have no idea of what your constitutional position is. What is our position here? And like you said, we're not looking for completion, it's more connection. And that is something that can be had all the time. That is something that can be had much more readily available than this. You have this job to complete me. Now the job, it's no longer a job. This is a conglomerate effort. This is a collaboration. What are we, like, how do we connect? Changes the mood of so many relationships.
I love it. I feel like we got to cut it. We're ready to rev into a whole nother episode here. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. We're always really, really glad that we're here. We love seeing all the shares and the things posted online from episodes, people listening from all over the world. Please know that we love you and we're glad that you're part of our spiritual family. Today, some important updates. Today's Thursday, so no episode tomorrow, no show tomorrow because Kishor and I are flying in an airplane to India. And so there's no episode tomorrow. And then next week, we're going to be in India. So we are adjusting the time frame where we're going to be doing it our evening time, which will be 6:30 p.m. our evening, which I believe is 8 a.m. East Coast time. It's an hour earlier, Kimberly. I don't know if you're going to be able to make it. If you can't make it, that's okay. It'll be 5 a.m. Pacific Coast time. But it'll be 8 a.m. Eastern time. Check on the Rise platform for our live listeners. The time that it'll be up there. And we're going to have Danya Rico is going to be joining us as well because she's going to be with On Pilgrimage. And so she's going to be joining in on the fun. And that's going to be our time and schedule and location for next week. So please keep that in mind. The next time we see you, things go smoothly, God and COVID willing, we'll be in India. So thank you guys all so much. Love you guys. Be well. Take care. And we'll see you next time.